On June 25, 1975, the world's largest democracy effectively vanished. Through a single executive decree, the Indian government suspended constitutional rights and plunged the country into a 21-month period of authoritarian rule, known simply as the emergency. The architect of this decree was Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. She was raised on the ideals of freedom and democracy, receiving letters from her father, Jawaharlal Nehru, about the martyrs of liberty while he sat in a British prison. Yet faced with a court ruling against her own electoral practices and rising political opposition, she chose absolute control over the democratic process. Within hours of the declaration, opposition leaders and political rivals were dragged from their beds and locked in jail cells. By morning, the electricity supply to major newspaper offices had been cut, ensuring a total press blackout across the nation. Indira Gandhi dismantled the state using its own rulebook. By activating specific constitutional clauses, she weaponized the legal architecture of the republic to silence it from within. If you look at the official state records from those 21 months, you will not find the human suffering. You will find a sterile collection of bureaucratic legal documents and neatly printed government pamphlets with titles like Democracy Preserved. This socio-legal review discusses MISA, giving the state power of preventive detention to lock up citizens and unionists indefinitely without charges. Look at the footnote. Overwhelming legislative majorities placed these laws into the Ninth Schedule, shielding them entirely from court scrutiny. Her closest aides later claimed that Gandhi was unaware of her son Sanjay's actions and that he was propped up by ambitious bureaucrats seeking his favor. By framing the era's violence as his doing alone, these accounts tried to decouple the prime minister from the power she authorized. When the state tightly controls the legal archive and heavily censors the press, the law transforms into a tool for rewriting history. It creates a vast, silent vacuum right where the truth of the people's experience should be. To justify this suspension of civil liberties, Gandhi leaned on the idea of a foreign hand. She warned the public of vague, dark conspiracies and external enemies trying to destabilize the nation, creating a convenient paranoia to mask her internal vulnerabilities. The government also deployed a sophisticated vocabulary to warp reality. In a national broadcast, Gandhi told the public that the explicit purpose of imposing strict press censorship was to restore a climate of trust. Her aides and loyalists pushed a cohesive narrative that the nation developed a disease of anarchy. The emergency, they argued, was simply the bitter medicine required to lower inflation, to curb smuggling, and fix the economy. The prime minister even claimed that there was no show of force anywhere in the country, and that the police actually had less work to do. On the ground, an emboldened police force was acting with absolute, unchecked impunity. These top-down, sanitized state records create a flawless illusion of order. They completely fail to capture the deep social breakdown, fear, and violence occurring just beneath the surface of the propaganda. This brings us to an academic framework known as law in literature. As this title page establishes, when the press is silenced and legal commentaries are too dry to capture human anxiety, popular fiction steps in to serve as a vital social record. Authors like Salman Rushdie used imaginative frameworks to document the era. In his novel Midnight's Children, magical realism acts as a mirror, drawing a direct metaphorical connection between the protagonist's fracturing life and the nation's crumbling political state. While official texts discussed the Maintenance of Internal Security Act in cold, clinical terms, these novels laid out the visceral reality. They detailed the horrors of government family planning quotas, forced sterilization camps, and bulldozing urban slums. With the press muzzled, fiction transformed into a vital anti-authoritarian archive. These stories documented human consequences that official newspapers were forbidden to print. In January 1977, after 20 months of absolute rule, Gandhi unexpectedly called for elections. She made this decision largely because her own intelligence agencies, perhaps too afraid to tell her the truth, predicted a comfortable, sweeping victory. Instead, the public delivered a total electoral defeat. The ruling party was thoroughly crushed at the ballot box, and both Gandhi and her son lost their constituencies, bringing the emergency to a sudden close. According to her private secretary, when she heard the results, her reaction wasn't regret for the abuses of the past 2 years. There was just a sense of relief on her face, as she reportedly said, "Thank God, I'll have time to myself." Even today, modern loyalists and revisionists try to rehabilitate this period. They point to falling prices, strict bureaucratic discipline, and rising food grain production to justify the suspension of democracy. But a dictator's draft of history is always incomplete. They can rewrite the Constitution, lock up the opposition, and censor the press, but they cannot erase the memories of the people. Memories that will always find a way to survive in their art, their literature, and their stories.